You cannot sit still for more than 2 minutes without swinging your arms and legs. You got to have the perfect equipment, otherwise you're gonna get frostbite. And uh, and in those kind of temperatures, you would succumb to that. If you'd have the right equipment, you would less than a day you'd be finished in that. It would be pretty rough.
Hi there, I'm Alex Roddy, editor of Sidetracked magazine, and I work throughout the UK outdoor media industry. And I'm here to talk to Lonnie Dupre, who is an Arctic explorer who's had a career stretching back to decades and has seen many changes in the Arctic during that time. So, Lonnie, it's a real pleasure and a privilege to
Hi,
see you here.
hi, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watched your film Amka last night. Tell me a bit about how you got into Arctic exploration and adventure.
Well, Arctic exploration actually started when I was really young. Kid growing up on the farm because I realized that I don't do well in the summer months, and but when winter came, it was beautiful because I could leave the farm, I could get out on a pair of snowshoes, and I could. It also expanded my places I could explore because the lakes were frozen over, and I didn't have to do farm work anymore at that time of year. So I really actually adapted to winter early on, and then from after high school, I went straight up to Alaska to commercial fish, and I just kind of got hooked on the Arctic up there a little bit, and then I wanted to figure out, well, how can I go explore further reaches in the Arctic, like the Canadian Arctic and even Greenland and even Siberia. And so I started, went on my first expedition in 1989 with a friend of mine, Paul Shirky from Ely, Minnesota, where we did the Bering Bridge expedition, which was a joint Soviet-American expedition peace between the two superpowers, and we traveled that by ski and dog team. And so I realized that that was a good way to travel and get around the Arctic regions. And then I went on to launch some of my own projects. In 1991-92, I went on to cross the Northwest Passage in Canada by dog teams in the winter, and then I went on to many other projects, North Pole a couple times, pulling sleds on skis, and then circumnavigating Greenland. Yeah, so I've been doing it a long time and have never got tired of it.
No, and reading your book Life on Ice, I'm impressed by just the sheer range of extreme environments that you've had to face, and also like how much they've been changing as well. So can you maybe tell us about some of the most difficult moments you've experienced personally on these expeditions?
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult expeditions was going to the North Pole from Canada. We left on March 8th, and it was minus 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Extremely cold. As a matter of fact, when you get out and start the expedition like that in those temperatures, you even wonder, like, how do polar bears even exist and stay warm in this temperature? Because everything that cold breaks. You cannot sit still for more than 2 minutes without swinging your arms and legs. You got to have the perfect equipment, otherwise you're gonna get frostbite. And in those kind of temperatures, you would succumb to that. If you'd have the right equipment, you would less than a day you'd be finished in that. It would be pretty rough. So that was one of the hardest things because you gotta not only deal with that extreme cold, but now you have to set up camp. Setting up camp in those conditions takes 3 hours for a very simple camp with just two people. Setting up a tent, 3 hours, melting snow into drinking water, getting all your gear, getting your sleeping bags out, getting in your sleeping bags, getting out of your sleeping bags in the morning is probably the worst you can imagine at those temperatures.
Yeah.
And then do it consecutively for 60 days.
I can imagine. I mean, I find it difficult enough in Scotland in the winter in the mountains where it's maybe 2 or 3 degrees below freezing. So I can imagine it being even worse. But one thing I'm really interested about, And it's only just occurred to me to ask you about this, but a theme that crops up throughout your book is one of leadership, actually, and how it took you a while to kind of feel like you developed your leadership skills and expeditions, and kind of particularly resolving interpersonal conflicts. Do you have any insights into that?
Yeah. If you're looking for a partner for an expedition, the first qualifications is they have to be happy-go-lucky,
Okay.
right? Then you can teach the rest of it. But they have to have a very good positive outlook right from the start, because it gets pretty grim on expeditions, especially long ones. And then is when you're forming an expedition. Never go with uneven teams like 3, 5, 7. That doesn't work, because there's always inevitably, no matter how hard you try, one person will always feel on the out, no matter how hard you try. And the only remedy to that possibly could be made is that the team leader would put himself out of that, making it even, right? But then that's a very lonely spot to be, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what were your most difficult moments as an expedition leader? Because there were a few examples where I noticed that team members weren't speaking for long periods and things like that. How did that affect you on these big expeditions?
Right. So, yeah. So, of course, communication is huge, but also when you're on a two-person expedition like that, of course, you try to work as a team. But if things go awry, really, the decision making is made by the person with the most experience. In that case, it was myself, and my partner didn't like those decisions. But I said, well, when you have your own expedition, you could decide. But we were in a very dangerous situation that I can foresee things ending up in potential fatality, and called it. And the person I had with me didn't agree with that, but of course they had to live with that. And But they went on to do other expeditions on their own, and not without some failures, as well as all of us. And you just get back on the horse, and learn from your mistakes, and it makes you stronger, a lot stronger, actually.
And would you say that these expeditions have, I suppose, put another way, like how have these expeditions shaped you as a person? How have they shaped your character? That's a big question, I suppose.
Well, I know if a person sets their mind to something and does their homework, you can pretty much succeed in anything. I mean, there's going to be a lot of failures along the way. Like my Denali trip, for instance, I made three attempts at trying to get to the summit, even though I didn't feel like it personally failed. The weather shut me down, which is very difficult. But you also gotta take that as like, okay, that's just how it is. And when you're climbing in those extremes, or climbing any mountain, it's really the mountain's just allowing you to be there, and you have to have respect for the mountain. If the mountain says you can't climb me today, you got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start bucking the weather and pushing through, and we got to get to the top, that's when trouble comes.
The summit fever, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And coming here to the UK and meeting so many other adventurers and people who write about these adventures, what's your impression been of this festival so far?
I've been really I've been surprised at the numbers, and I'm so happy to see people are getting more and more into the outdoors, because it's people who spend time outdoors who actually want to protect it.
Yes.
And so the more people we can get outdoors and hiking and kayaking and skiing, the more people we'll have there to protect it.
Yeah.
And so I firmly believe that,
Okay.
because people who have spent little or no time in the environment have no idea what they need to protect.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a good point. And of course the festival's tagline is, share the adventure. So is that something you'd support? Do you have any particular tips for how to share that adventure in a kind of responsible and respectful way so that it has this positive impact?
Yeah, I think when people go out there and do their adventure or do do whatever they're going to be doing out there, is to stop for a moment and look around you and look below your feet and spread the grass and see what's living there, or look up in the trees and take time to really absorb that, and then talk about that, and not so much the feat or the human strength or the endurance one had to go through. It's not really about that. It's about the environment in which you're allowed to be in.
I really admire that because we hear so many of these, as you said, we hear so many stories about human feats of endurance. It's more difficult, I think, to see what's actually there. So thank you for saying that. I like that.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. And even though our trips are long and difficult, we've been doing. I've been on the outdoors my whole life, so these aren't physically difficult, as physically or draining on me as they were when I first started out. So it gives me more time to dig into the nature of things around me, and so I appreciate that too.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I guess just to close up, do you have any words of advice for people who are looking to follow in similar footsteps?
Yeah, similar footsteps. Well, I would say really do your homework. Test all your equipment thoroughly. Take the time to pick a good team, and and do lots of testing. Go out on a 3-day adventure. Go out on a 7-day adventure. Go on a 2-weekend adventure before you get into the big ones. Because if you're in a location, a very real remote location, it's very difficult to get rescued, and in some cases, not at all.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. That's been brilliant. Awesome.